everyone, and welcome to Careers Life in Yale's Must See Yaley show. I'm sure everyone knows, but the topic for tonight's show is gender diversity in investment management with Seema Hingorani, Yale College class of 91. And my name, for those of you I haven't met yet, is Yvette Solis Rivers. I am Yale College class of 96. And I am on the Yale Alumni Board of Governors. And Orlando Yarborough and I are now the new co-chairs for this subcommittee. And we welcome everyone joining us, alumni as well as current students. And so for those of you who are new to our series, this is our fall kickoff for the Careers Life in Yale weekly virtual show. These shows, basically our aim in these shows is to facilitate the sharing of wisdom from alumni to alumni and between alumni and students. And it's all with the goal to help with career and life decisions and transitions. So we're so glad you could make it tonight, and we invite you to come back anytime for our weekly programs. And also just feel free to reach out to us if you have any ideas or recommendations for other inspiring Yaleys that we could invite to be on our show. And just a few notes before we get started with our program. We are recording the show, and this recording will be available on YAA's Vimeo channel if you want to share it or watch it again. Please do stay on mute until we get to the discussion period. I also did want to make a note to just thank our amazing YAA staff that helps to put these weekly shows together. Steve Bloom, Chelsea Gladu, and Kate Gustafson. And finally, just one last note. If you haven't already, we strongly encourage you to join YAA's Cross Campus. It's an online community. It has 24,000 Yaleys, alumni and students. And it's basically like the LinkedIn for Yaleys. It's a great opportunity to network with pre-vetted Yaleys and just a great way to connect. So that's crosscampus.yale.edu. Thanks, Chelsea. So, okay, so tonight we are so excited to hear about Seema's professional journey as a woman in investment management. And for the first part of our time together, I will facilitate a conversation with Seema, and then we'll open it up just for anyone to ask questions on the screen, or you can enter a question in the chat if you prefer that. So that's that. So let me just start off by introducing Seema. Seema has 27 years of investment management experience. She is managing director at Morgan Stanley Investment Management. She's also founder and chair of Girls Who Invest, a nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing the number of women in portfolio management and executive leadership in the asset management industry, which I'm sure we will hear more about in our conversation today. And before that, she was founder and chief investment officer of 7-Step Capital, which is an investment platform focused on seeding women portfolio managers. And before that, she was chief investment officer for the New York City retirement systems. And she's won numerous awards and recognitions, and she earned a BA in psychology and philosophy from Yale College in 91, and then later an MBA in finance from the Wharton School. So Seema, we are just so thankful to you for taking the time to be with us tonight and to share your inspiring story. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Yvette. It's really nice to meet you. This is our first time actually seeing each other on the screen. And Steve, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. It's fantastic.
Awesome. All right. So one question I love to ask our guests is, when you got into Yale, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I thought I wanted to be a corporate lawyer, and, I guess not so different maybe than others, but growing up, in the Indian community, at least in our family at the time, especially, you were either a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. And anything other than that really didn't make the list. And so my older brother and older sister, who also both went to Yale, they both became doctors. And ever since though I was 12 years old, I really did think I wanted to be a corporate lawyer. I used to love that television show, Perry Mason. And I just saw myself one day, doing that kind of work. And so all throughout school that, in college at Yale, that's where I was headed. And what happened though was in senior year, I again, being the youngest, I felt like, well, my brother went straight from Yale to medical school. He actually went to Yale Medical School. And then he told my sister and I, don't do that. Don't go straight to grad school. Take some time because you're going to be working the rest of your life. And so my sister took him up on that. And so she actually took a year and taught English in Japan before going to medical school. And I just thought, well, I'm the youngest. They won't so much care about what I might do. And so how about if I take 3 years and work for a while before I go to law school? And it was in those 3 years where a lot of my classmates, a lot of students, I think, in college think about maybe going to work for an investment bank and investment banking. I didn't know what any of that meant. And I just thought, well, if I want to be a corporate lawyer, maybe I ought to check out Wall Street because a lot of my friends are doing these analyst programs. And again, I really don't know what that is, but why don't I try it out? And so literally in some of the interviews, firms that came to campus, they'd, look at my resume and say, what are you doing in this room with us? And I would say, well, no, I'm really interested in this. And some of the firms were like, yeah, no. And then others said, well, okay, we'll take you up on this. And I basically said to them, I came to Yale and I think what I did is I learned how to think and I learned how to write. And if I could teach you Martin Heidegger's existential philosophy in the next 20 minutes, you can give me an accounting textbook and I'll figure it out. And so again, some firms were like, no way, goodbye. And others were like, okay, let's see what you can do. And it was in getting one of those first jobs that I realized, oh my God, I love the markets. And wait a minute, I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to be an investor. I don't want to go to law school. I want to go to business school. And that changed my life forever. And I was actually nervous, though, to tell my parents because I thought I would disappoint them and let them down. And of course, they just wanted me to be happy. But I was nervous. I made my brother come with me to a dinner to kind of break the news to them. And my God, they just were just so happy. I was happy. And I've been an investor ever since. And I love what I do.
Oh, that is so awesome. That's funny. I actually thought I was going to be a lawyer as well when I went to Yale. Didn't quite work out that way. I'm sure that happens for most people who go to Yale, right? Who think they're going to be lawyers. Okay. That's an awesome story. All right. So BA in psychology and philosophy. So you mentioned this, but can you tell us a little bit more, like how you went from that to this career path, and maybe how did you find like you were able to utilize what you learned at Yale anyway, in this path that you move forward with?
Definitely. When I think about what makes a good investor and what makes a great investor, so much of it is an art, not a science. I mean, the financial models that we build, you can teach that to anybody, in my view. And when I started this nonprofit called Girls Who Invest, I focused on freshmen and sophomores in college, 18, 19-year-old women who've never looked at a financial statement before in their lives, like me.
Yeah.
And I just thought we can teach them that. We can teach them the technical skills. It's then the judgment and being able to read people, honestly. You sit across the table from these chief executive officers, chief financial officers of these, big companies, medium-sized companies, smaller companies, whether they're publicly traded or private companies. These are people running businesses at the end of the day. And so I have to tell you, like, studying psychology and philosophy helped me a lot as an investor because, again, the numbers only tell you so much, and it's just the ability to interact with a leadership team, a management team on the other side of the table. And you ask good questions. And of course, you're going to be prepared and do your homework. But it's the kinds of questions you ask. It's the responses you get back, being able to read somebody who's saying one thing, but actually is telling you another thing. I mean, that's really interesting to me. And that's actually why another big reason why I love what I do is because, every day I go to work, I get to solve a puzzle every day. And I learn something new every day. And so for all those people out there that are intellectually curious, which I think is a lot of Yale students, a lot of Yale graduates, alumni, this is one of the best jobs out there, I think, because the markets change every minute, every day, every month, every quarter, every year. And that's what makes it fascinating, challenging, frustrating. I mean, my brother is a scientist, and he has said to me many times, he said, man, if I had to do what you do, I would like bang my head against the wall. There's truth in science. There's truth. And I know that if I do an experiment this way, I get an answer. If I do it this way, I get an answer. But he says to me, and I'm a public markets investor, and I love the stock market. I love investing in public stocks. And so he would say to me, I don't know how you do it. And I would say, well, I love what I do.
That's so awesome.
It's so different. It's so interesting. It changes all the time. And it's often I need to know who I'm sitting at the poker table with. Who are these other investors out there that are my peers that think differently than I do about a particular company and the way we should value that company? But that's what makes markets, right? Is I'm going to be on the other side of their trade. But I find that fascinating. And again, I love it. But it is for certain people, right? And others who, like my brother, find the truth every day. My truth will be different than somebody else's truth. And again, that's what makes markets.
That's awesome. So you wouldn't say that there's like a student who's in any major could eventually kind of come to a career in investment management. There's no sort of one path or correct path. No.
And although I have to say that my industry and the leadership of our industry for decades thought more like that, which was a problem in my view, that they in their heads decided that, this is the path that you need to take. You need to go to whatever the right school is. You need to have whatever the right background is, the right major study in order to get one of these, coveted jobs. And I didn't believe that at all. And, and I wasn't the only example of that. There's plenty of people in the investment business that come from very different backgrounds and they're very successful. It's just, there's still that group of folks out there that just decided that, no, this was the way. And if you didn't go this way, that you would either not get invited in, or if you did somehow make it in, that you'd have a tough time and eventually you probably would leave. Or be asked to leave, right, in certain situations. And again, that never made any sense to me because, and this occurred to me actually only until I sat in the seat as chief investment officer of the New York City Pension Fund. So I spent most of my career in the private sector at big mutual fund companies, big hedge funds. I was an analyst, portfolio manager, managing, helping manage billions of dollars. It was incredible, but I got to the point in my life and career where I did want to give back and do public service. So I joined the New York City Pension Fund in early 2010 and then became the chief investment officer. And so it was when I was in that seat, and this is 2013, 2014, was where I saw very little diversity on investment teams at asset managers all over the world. And at the time, I was responsible for managing $160 billion on behalf of all the great New York City teachers and firefighters and police officers for their retirement security. So that was big responsibility, a great privilege. And I never thought I'd be there for 4 years. I thought I'd give it 2 years, feel really good about doing public service. I go back to my whole life in the private sector, but it was amazing. And it was some of the best 4 years of my career, honestly. And it was hard. But what we were able to do and in terms of turning around the performance of the portfolio dramatically in 4 years, and it was just amazing. But it was there that every time I met an asset manager, they'd come to meet with me, they'd sit down, I'd get to their organizational chart and I look down on it and say, oh my God, you guys, where are all the women on your investment team? Right? I didn't understand what was going on. When I asked the question, of course, the answer I kept getting back was, oh, Seema, of course we want to hire more women and more diversity, but we just don't get resumes from women. And I just thought, oh, come on. I mean, we've heard that so many times before, but I was willing to agree with them. And I just said, you know what? Okay, maybe that's true. Maybe you do have a pipeline problem, but we can fix that. And then, of course, I had the other part of the conversation. I said, look, but we need to talk about the other piece, which is, again, no judging, no blaming. But there's still firms out there in our business that have cultures that are not so welcoming to women and diversity. So let's have that conversation too. And that way we'll tackle it from both ends. So if we have a pipeline problem, we can fix that. This other piece we need to work on also. I basically said, look, I think we all agree, we've all read the same research that more gender diverse teams get better outcomes. So of course you're going to want to have that when you're sitting around the table trying to make these really hard investment decisions. I mean, this idea of groupthink. It doesn't just affect people in the investment management industry. It affects all parts of the corporate sector, all parts of the economy, all parts of society, in the political world as well, right? Decision-making, it's just purely that. The better decision-making happens when you have the most diversity of thought at the table. And often, how do you get that? You get that with people of diverse backgrounds, whether it's ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, majors of study, colleges, family lives, gender, all of that, disability, LGBTQ community. I mean, it's all the differences of all of us coming together. And so to me, that just made the most sense. And, but, I was talking to leadership, mostly men, and that's okay. There are a lot of great men in our industry, and look, a lot of billionaire men in our industry just have been doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then, of course, when I dug a little deeper to find out, well, okay, if you're telling me you can't find women or you're not finding women, what do you do to recruit? So how do you recruit? And then I kept hearing, oh, okay, Seema, we go to these 4 schools and we go to these 2-year investment banking programs. And that's when I just said, wait a minute, that's what you do? No wonder you're having a problem with diversity. What are you talking about? So I realized they didn't want to do the work. That's what it came down to, in my view. A lot of these firms in our business, again, many very successful asset management firms that have huge, again, responsibilities and jobs to make money for a lot of people that need it. Again, teachers, firefighters, police officers, city employees, state employees, moms and dads, grandmothers and grandfathers, students saving for their school and study and all of that, and retirement. This is really, high pressured, but a lot of responsibility goes with that. And yet they didn't have college internship programs. And I didn't know that, actually, and I didn't understand it. And so it was just a matter of sitting down. I thought, just the great women and men in our industry, let's just sit around a table and try to figure this out. And so I ended up starting this nonprofit called Girls Who Invest, which, again, I never intended to start a nonprofit called Girls Who Invest. I've never done anything like this before in my life. I just wrote an op-ed. Bloomberg published it in September of 2014. I just wanted to get a conversation started more broadly about this issue. And before I knew it, my op-ed happened to be one of the 4 most read articles on the Bloomberg terminal that day. And it was an op-ed. I got hundreds of emails from men and women in our business, college professors, business school professors saying, Seema, you got to do this. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute. You want me to start Girls Who Invest? That's so not what I was planning to do in my career, but okay, clearly passionate about it. And so I woke up one day with a 10-page business plan and a board, and that was it in 2015. And what has become 7 years later is the most amazing thing. We have so many incredible Yale women that have gone through our programs in 7 years who are now graduated, and some still in school, but they're getting the most incredible jobs on investment teams at some of the best firms in the industry. And 2,000 women overall across 150 different colleges and universities across the United States have gone through our programs. 70% of these women staying in the business, getting multiple offers from 110 plus firms around the world. There's a wait list of firms wanting to hire women now. I mean, it's amazing. And I did was I did a 10-week summer program and I just trained them for 4 weeks and that was it. And look what's happened. So,
wow. Well, that's amazing. So do you feel like outside of your program, do you think things are improving in the industry, or are you still sort of frustrated overall, outside of the efforts that you're making?
I've been very encouraged by our industry in the last 7 years as a founder of Girls Who Invest. There are a couple examples where there are firms out there, one of which is called Oak Tree Capital. They manage, $175+ billion, publicly traded company. Howard Marks is the founder, an incredible guy. He and I got to know each other early on when I was at the city of New York. We had money invested with Oak Tree Capital. When I decided I was going to start Girls Who Invest, he's one of my first phone calls. We sat down for breakfast. I'll never forget. And he said, I love what you're doing with these younger college women. Seema, this is great. Now I want to support you, but I don't have a college internship program. I never have. And I want to do this, but I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing either. And I'm taking 2 years out of my career to build this thing. So we're going to figure it out together. This summer, he had 45 summer interns. He went from 0 to 45 because of me and Girls Who Invest.
Wow.
8 of whom were my Girls Invest scholars, half of whom are women. And the list just goes on and on and on of firms like this. I mean, Goldman Sachs has hired 30 of my women full-time. Blackstone has hired 12 of my women full-time. Morgan Stanley Investment Management, where I am today, we've hired 6 of our women full-time, another 4 in wealth management, Wellington Management, another 6 full-time. I mean, this is what has happened. And so I am very encouraged that these are firms not just checking any boxes. I mean, I think they knew very well that I am not a person that checks any boxes. And we as an organization have actually turned down firms that have wanted to partner with us because that is how we felt. We felt that they were just checking a box. We're going to say that we care about diversity. So here we go. We're going to hire a Girls Invest scholar, and yay for us. And we're going to tell all of our clients, hey, look what we're doing. And now you should invest more money with us because look, we do care about it. We just hired a Girls Invest scholar. And they really don't want to do more than that. They don't actually believe that this helps their business. They're just trying to check a box. And so that we're not interested in. But think about it. We now, with 110 partner firms around the world as partners of Girls Invest with a wait list behind it, we haven't had to compromise on that. And that to me is very encouraging. And I was willing to make a bet though. I started with 30 women in this program, and I was willing to make a bet that by the time I needed those internships, because I knew we were going to grow. So my model is, I knew we had 10 weeks in a summer. That's what we all get, right? As students. And so I thought, okay, I know this is about getting these young women jobs that and opening up doors that have been closed to them for reasons I never understood why. So I knew it was about getting them jobs so they could see for themselves what it was like to be an investor. Why shouldn't they have that as an option on the table? I think most people know what it is to be a lawyer, an engineer, a doctor, maybe an investment banker, maybe a consultant, but investor, I didn't know, and there weren't a lot of women in the early days when I did try to figure out, do I need to start something called Girls Invest? I was doing a lot of my research, and I found out that a lot of young women didn't know about our industry, right? And they especially didn't know it was interesting, stimulating, rewarding, and impactful. That was a big one, right? A lot of those women were like, Seema, we don't just want to make a lot of money. We want to make a positive impact on the world. I'm like, yeah, so do I. And don't you realize you can do that as an investor? And they didn't believe me. So I had to give them simple examples. And then they thought, oh my God, where do we sign up? Right. And then of course you do get some women who did know about our industry and what they knew, not so great, particularly post 2008 and the financial crisis. And a lot of those women were saying to me, oh, and by the way, it doesn't help when you have movies in Hollywood called The Wolf of Wall Street and shows on Showtime called Billions. Okay. So those women would say, you know what, Seema, we do know about your industry and what we know. Yeah, not so good. This is not a noble profession. By the way, because you guys are a bunch of mean, greedy, competitive people who sometimes go to jail. And I was like, whoa, we have a little bit of an image problem here. I was like, okay, I got that. So I tell you those women, okay, true, but there's only this many of them. And let's put them to the side for now. Yeah. And oh my God, let me tell you about all the amazing women and men in our industry who are doing all these incredible things I just described to you. And you know what? They're my friends. You think I'm hanging out with these other people? No, these are my friends. And I'm going to introduce you to them one by one. So this is how I came up with this. So knew it was about jobs, didn't feel comfortable enough sending them to those jobs without the training. So hence 4 weeks of training, followed by a 6-week paid internship at a leading asset manager. And in the beginning, I had to twist arms to get some of these firms to hire these women. Now, I did have some great early partners, Vista Equity Partners and Robert Smith, D.E. Shaw, Bloomberg came in early, Jonathan Gray at Blackstone came in early. Some of these guys came in early. Howard Marks, right? But whoa, it was hard in the beginning. And now to think 7 years later, we have a wait list. So I am been very encouraged that we've got the industry paying attention, not only paying attention, but hiring as many of our scholars as they can. And then we got close to 2,000 applications for 200 spots in my program this summer. Because of the overwhelming response we've gotten from all these super talented women from all across the US, across colleges everywhere, which I knew they were out there. It was just a matter of going out to find them. So I literally wrote an application myself. It's the same application today. And I was trying to think back to my time at Yale, applying to colleges and then applying to business school. I hadn't applied to something in a long time. And I just thought to myself, okay, what do I want to learn from these women? Again, I know that there are a lot of talented women everywhere, but I also wanted to build this community of women that would help each other and back each other up and support each other. Because I have to say, the guys have the best boys club I've ever seen. And I feel like an honorary member in many ways, which is really great, but it's not the same. And what do these guys do so well is they support each other and they do business together. And I can tell you, we as women, we don't do that enough. And I'm trying to help that more by being at Morgan Stanley, starting a fund to invest in women. So we're going to do business together. That is fundamentally what I'm doing right now with my career. And we're making progress. We're going to make more progress. And we got to do this at scale because that, do we all have a lot of time? I don't. I don't know about you guys, but I don't. And my father, unfortunately, passed away of pancreatic cancer when he was 64 years old. Now my brother, he's one of the nation's leading pancreatic cancer scientists, he's not slept in 23 years since my dad passed away. He's been in the lab and he's this close to finding a cure. Wow. Life is short. I've seen it. I think a lot of us have seen it and lived it. And so we got to do this fast, and the only way to do it is as an industry, we all have to come together. And again, I go back to sitting around the table in those early days with a lot of these great men in our industry. And I would say to them, look, again, to me, this is just a conversation between the great women and men trying to figure this out. That's it. I don't care what you did before. That's whatever. It's fine. But what are we going to do now? And how are we going to figure this out? And I think because it's just who I am anyway as a person, but I think because we've taken that very positive view and very positive narrative that's been out there about what we're trying to do, we have gotten all these great folks to come to the table. And I didn't expect it. I was hoping this would happen. And that's what's happened. And we've raised close to $20 million to do Girls Invest. I made all the programs free. That is very much what I wanted to do. My parents came to the US over 50 years ago from India with $8 in their pocket. And I remember what that was like growing up and what my parents did to allow my brother, sister, and I to go to Yale. I mean, took a second mortgage out on our house. We grew up in Norwalk, Connecticut. I remember all of that. And I never wanted money to ever be an issue for any young woman to have this opportunity to go through my program, let alone get an opportunity in our business. And so I'm chair of the board still. As founder, I still spend a lot of time. I spend 80 to 100 hours a year on the phone with our alumni just because I want to help them navigate all these situations. I don't have kids of my own. I have 3 beautiful nephews, my sister's boys, but I feel like these are my girls. And so all the programs are free. We have online programs because I got overwhelmed with the response for the on-campus program. So we do this on campus at Wharton, where I did get my MBA. That 4 weeks of training, these women are taught by some of the best business school professors in the world. In fact, we have Yale School of Management professors who come down to Philadelphia and teach our young women core finance and investment concepts. That's only part of the program, though. I knew we had to do other things to build their confidence before we send them off to these paid internships. And so we do presentation skills training, interview prep training, business etiquette training. I have somebody comes in and teaches these young women, okay, this skirt length, okay, this one, no way. This dress, okay, that one, no way. These shoes, okay, no, though, not those ones.
Really?
Then we have a speaker series. We bring women and men from our industry across asset classes. So stock investors, bond investors, private equity investors, real estate investors, infrastructure investors, hedge fund investors, so they could see for themselves, going back to some of the earlier comments these young college women were giving me about our industry, saying, we don't think these people share our values and we don't think we want to work with these people. I said, fine. Every day at lunch, then you're going to hear from another amazing woman and man in our industry. And then you tell me what you think. And then we bring in chief investment officers from U.S. public pension plans, university endowments, foundations. The Yale endowment has gotten involved. University of Pennsylvania has gotten involved. I mean, we bring in people from everywhere. So again, these young women can listen and learn from some of the best in our industry, but then they also realize, oh my God, wait a minute, these people are kind and they do share my values. And I think I would want to work for some of these folks and with these folks. So a lot has gone into thinking about how to put this together, but a lot of what I feel like Girls Invest is how I was born and raised, what I learned growing up, what I learned in my career, all the mistakes I made, all the twists and turns that I've had in my career. And really, again, to help these young women realize that not only can you do this job and do it really well, but this is something that you may love and hopefully you will, and then you will help us change the world because we need you. I basically say to them, we need you in our industry for us to continue to be successful and continue to do what we're supposed to be doing in terms of helping people plan for retirement and helping communities thrive, not just survive and thrive, and the economies to survive and thrive around the world. I mean, it's the only way. And if we all do it together, otherwise it's going to be a very disappointing situation for everybody, and it's not going to be good for anybody.
It sounds like such an amazing program, the Girls Who Invest. Now, for folks who are for students who are in underrepresented groups, sort of not just the women, but just anyone who's in a group who's underrepresented in this industry. I mean, what advice would you give them if they're interested in this industry but don't have a program like yours? Because obviously not everybody can benefit from it. Like, what advice do you have? Because I'm assuming it's not just, like you said earlier, it's not just there aren't enough resumes. Like, what advice do you have for them to overcome some of the real barriers in getting those opportunities?
So, I'm happy to say that now, at least for college women, the word got out. So 7 years now into Girls Who Invest, I've heard from women on college campuses across the US that we're one of the hottest tickets.
Oh, okay.
If you have any interest in finance or investing, you got to apply to Girls Who Invest. And we made it so that if you couldn't get into our capacity constrained on-campus program, you can get into our online programs. And that is why, I didn't want our acceptance rates to be the acceptance rates of Yale or Harvard or some of these other universities. I mean, I get it, we're Yale and all that, but my program, it is a 10% or 15% acceptance. So I want to do better than that. But that's why I did add online programs, and they're all free also. And those programs, that is very scalable. We can reach many, many, many more women. So this summer, we had 207 women training on Penn's campus in Philadelphia, attached to the 6-week guaranteed paid internship. But in the online programs, we had 350 women going through those programs. This is our biggest year ever. And it's all self-directed online learning. It's all free. We partner with CFA Institute, Wall Street Prep, and Wharton Online. These are 3 modules. It's about 60 hours. You pass, we give them six months to finish it. You pass all 3 modules. You now get a credential that you're a Girls Who Invest online scholar. Women are putting that on their resumes and their LinkedIn pages, and they're getting amazing jobs on their own. Now, I say on their own, it's with our brand and our training, but on their own, that is not a guaranteed internship through us.
And is that for, I'm just curious, like criteria. So
any freshman, any sophomore woman.
Any woman or anyone who identifies?
Anyone who identifies as woman. Yes, we are. Okay. We've done all those things to be very, pro everything. So non-binary, transgender, anyone who identifies as a woman can apply to our programs. Men can apply too, actually. But anyway,
okay, no, that's actually kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, it is called Girls Who Invest. So we don't get applications. We actually got one in my 7 years that I can recall, because I'm not involved in the day-to-day anymore, but it is called Girls Who Invest. So there you have it. But yes, and it's for anyone and everyone. And again, we have a wait list for our on-campus, again, because that is capacity constraint, but the online ones,
it's on demand, right? So
it's on demand. Exactly.
Awesome. So let me get back to you a little bit, because you're just so inspiring. So you mentioned earlier, you teach about all the mistakes you made. What are the key ones that you remember, looking back? Like, it sounds like overall you've been just very happy with your path, but what are those mistakes that you've learned from that you teach others about?
Yeah, some of it comes down to, and I get asked this question in a similar way of, what would you tell your 20-year-old self? Now. Yeah. I think I was in too much of a rush to get to the next level. I mean, I was ambitious. I was driven. We all want to succeed. We want to get promoted. We all want to move forward. But I think I was too much in a rush for that. And I don't think I enjoyed enough of each moment and learned enough in each moment. I was just ready. And so, yeah, if I could go back, I would do that a little differently. And so that is something that I try to encourage our young women that go through our programs is, I hear you, but you're just starting out in your career. Enjoy all of this and learn from this person and learn from these people, and go volunteer to go do this kind of project, and spend that time, because it'll serve you well when you are ready, and you will get that next promotion, and you will get to that next spot. So that is definitely one of the things that, going back in time, I would have liked to have done that differently. But look, this again is a very people business. It's a people business, and in other businesses too, like, I used to be a media tech investor, and, in the media business, it's all about people, and in the advertising agency in particular, like that, the people go up and down the elevator, right? That's your business. And we've heard that phrase before, but it is very true. And so it's sometimes there are going to be times when things go your way. Right. And there are other times when you have to sort of figure out how to help that person understand where you're coming from, how to help this person buy into what you want to do. I mean, there was a lot of things that I had to learn the hard way. Particularly when you start managing people, and when you start managing a business, and I had to learn that transition, and I wanted to make that transition. I just got to the point where I didn't want to manage a stock portfolio anymore day to day. I wanted to do other things. I wanted to build a business. I wanted to think more broadly, not just about media and technology companies. I wanted to learn about all other sectors. I wanted to build a business. But to do that, then that transition was not easy. And suddenly it wasn't just about my own P&L that would determine how well I performed. Suddenly it was about other things. And then when it gets into those other things, that's when more, other factors come into play. There's more subjectivity than in your performance reviews and in your compensation. So one of the things I love about our business, and I tell all these young women and any young person out there that's interested in being an investor, is, it's much more objective. Like, if I have good performance, if I perform well for my investors, those are numbers. You can see those numbers. You can see the amount of money I'm making for people. And so therefore, if I do well, then I should get, this kind of reward and this kind of position, and mostly that's a direct connection that, that you perform well, and this is what happens. That I like a lot about our industry, because there are other industries out there that is it's harder to tell how well somebody performed. And then, people sit around a table and then they suddenly decide, and you're like, wait, I don't even understand how I got promoted or I didn't get promoted. Yeah. There's not enough transparency around that. And so in our business, it is much more objective. But when you move into management, then suddenly you kind of lose that attachment to the P&L. There's no more direct attachment to a P&L unless you become the CEO. But all along the way, it gets a little fuzzier. And so there are a lot of things that I learned about how to navigate that, and how to, you got to toot your horn a little bit, but not too much. You got to sort of say, hey, but I did that. And then, but not too much. So it sounds like you're boasting, right? And that's a thing that women, I have to say, have to walk that line very differently than men do. I mean, it's just stuff you just have to learn, and that's okay. I mean, it's just people, and you just have to figure that out, but that's not easy. And so, I really spent a lot of time with our young women as they're just getting going in their careers, so they don't trip over some of those landmines that I tripped over. And that I think is important. And if we could teach them that in the earlier part of their career, I that makes me so happy. There are still women out there, unfortunately, that I just feel like they think, well, Seema, we had to go through all that. And I'm like, well, exactly. So why do we want them to go through all that? So let's try to actually help them so they don't have to go through all that. And then guess what will happen? Maybe is these women will become more senior. They'll help start changing a lot of these cultures, and they'll manage a lot of the money. Isn't that what we all want? So
I had a great question for you, Seema. So I see we're down like 20 minutes. So maybe
no worries.
We could hit with some questions. Fascinating conversation. Actually, I see look, the background actually had some shared places together. I was at Pequot Capital back in the day on the venture side. Chat at one point. Really a great program. So one thing I'm picking up on, you've done this enough years now, you must have your own alumni base, right? So are those folks helping those folks? Any particular stories you want to share, advancements people have had, or a couple, 3 things would be great, I think, for this crowd to hear. And then other people may have questions as well. So in the final minutes, we have maybe a little lightning round.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I would want to catch up with you definitely about Pequot. Great place. And I went to Andor after that. But a lot, I mean, I gotta say, this is where I get all emotional, is when I talk about some of these young women and their stories and what's happening now. And I watch through email exchanges, and I get copied on trails of emails of how they are helping each other, backing each other up, supporting each other, and where they are in their careers now. And so just to give a little more data behind it, to the, the fact of focusing on these underrepresented women in our communities and in our business in particular. So this 2,000 number I told you about, these 2,000 women have gone through my programs in 7 years. 70% of these women are women of color. And a lot of these women are East Asian, South Asian women, but nearly 25% of the women are Black and Latina women, which our industry so doesn't look like. And we get better every year. 150 different colleges and universities represented in that number. 70 different majors of study. So we are taking the English majors, philosophy majors, biology majors, and some finance majors, right? And nearly 25% of the women identify as socioeconomically disadvantaged. And with all that diversity, right? 70% staying in the business, getting multiple offers. So that's super exciting. So here's what's happening. We now have, because we go younger, right? We focus on freshman and sophomore women. And we started with 30 women, right? So we grew but we have now over 200 women full-time on investment teams in 7 years.
Wow.
At some of these greatest firms. And there's hundreds more behind them. Because we went from 30 to 60 to 100, 150, 180, 180, 207, and then hundreds more on the online programs who are now getting jobs as well in the business. And so what's happening now is we do have some women that are 2-3 years out of school, and those women are getting promoted from analyst to associate. And now they're being in charge of analyst recruiting. And what are they doing? They're hiring their fellow Girls Invest scholars. It's the most beautiful thing. And it's already happening. And it's happening actually at some firms where we're not yet a partner in the venture community. So this, Jeff, we have to talk about, because of these 110 firms, very few are venture capital firms. And I've been pushing, and the responses I hear back don't make any sense to me. And I think people know me well enough. I'm not going to stop until I get these firms, because even the private equity firms in the early days were telling me, Seema, we're not going to hire right out of undergrad for our private equity investment team. Henry Kravis at KKR to my face was saying stuff like that. I mean, and then, of course, 4 years ago, I don't know if you guys recall, but big headline in the Wall Street Journal, KKR will now hire right out of undergrad for our private equity investment team. He's got 5 of our women full-time on his private equity investment team. So we are going to fix this too in venture. But we've got a scholar who went through our program in 2016. She was a College of Arts and Sciences major at Penn, never thought about her business ever before, switches into Wharton. That is so not what we encourage. We were like, study what you want, study what you love. That doesn't matter. Anyway, she ended up starting out in the business. Bessemer Ventures, great venture firm, as you know, many of you may know. We don't have a partnership with them. They hire her. She then, this is an example, she got promoted. She started doing analyst recruiting. She hired one of her fellow Girls Invest scholars, Alice Dang. I mean, this is going on and on and on. And on.
That's awesome.
There's so much more to do, but it's really, really great.
It looks like we have another question. Paolo.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Seema. This conversation has been amazing. My name is Paolo, and during the previous year, I was the co-president of SUBE, which is Yale's Latinx Pre-Professional Student Association. And a big thing for us has really been trying to provide as much information about these different industries for our students. And something that I've noticed is that the different industries, such as within finance or consulting, they want students who are majoring in English or that are majoring in engineering. But a lot of those students take a while to understand that consulting and finance may have a place for them. How has Girls Who Invest addressed that issue of, instead of waiting for students to come to them, actually go to those students and tell them, this is the place for you. This can be a place for you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Paolo. And that's awesome what you're doing. I went to campuses in the early days. And I would just talk to as many young women that would show up in the early days. And I really did have to sell our industry. I mean, it was, again, they didn't even know it existed, or they didn't think it was a noble place to be. Right. And so I was okay doing that. I didn't mind going to sell our industry because I love what we do. I think what we do is hugely impactful. And I kept saying, and I keep saying to these young women, I need to do less so now, thankfully. But, you know, when you control I'm like, you want to change the world? When you control capital, that's where the power and influence is. When you decide, of course, with an investment committee and a team, but when you help decide where that money gets invested, that's how you change the world. Now, that's not the only way, clearly, but that is a hugely impactful way to do it. And then they just had to believe, right, that there was a place for them there. And I managed to show them and convince them that this industry, our industry, was paying attention, and that they just, you know, were having a tough time getting their heads around how to hire these college students and what to do with them. Right. And so so I think fundamentally what I did with Girls Who Invest is I made it really easy for these firms to hire these super talented women from everywhere. And they trusted me. And that's basically it. Because, you know, my model, by the way, is this. And I did have some venture capitalists come to me in the early days like, Seema, this is really amazing. Why are you making this a nonprofit? It should be a for-profit. You can make so much money and blah, blah, blah. I was like, ew, no, get away from me. It's not that. And especially I would have never been able to get away with this model. So my view is in order to structurally change the way our industry recruits talent, the way they think about recruiting talent, long-term, forever, was to do it this way. So one, they weren't set up to do this. And I created a program and I made them do it and I helped them figure it out. But I went younger. They were like, look, we're not prepared and ready to hire these women and you're going to make us do it. And I was like, yep. And then they're like, okay, then, and we want them then when they're juniors in college, because if we like them, then we can just hire them when and we're done. I'm like, nope, we're going to go younger. And they're like, why? And I said, well, because if here's the thing, if we do our jobs well as Girls Who Invest and we inspire these women, we prepare them, we give them that confidence, they go off into the industry and you love them and you want to hire them full time, but they're an English major. So here's what you're going to say to me. I tried to create a program so no firm could ever say no to any women, basically is what I did. So I'd say, because then what you're going to say to me is you're going to say, oh my God, Seema, she was amazing. That's the English major that you found us? Oh, great. But shoot, she's a junior and I just wish she had a little bit more understanding of microeconomics or macroeconomics or whatever. And oh, well, she's going to go back as a senior. She's not going to have enough time to take those classes. And oh, well, I guess I can't hire her. I'm like, no, so you're not doing that. So I'm going younger. And then the third thing I said to them is, I said, oh, by the way, you don't get to interview them. I'm going to hand match these women with you guys. So here we are. I got some of the best firms out there. And they're like, what? You're not even going to let us interview them? I'm like, nope. And I said, because I know what you're going to say to me. You're going to say, I only want your Ivy League women. I'm like, no, that's part of the problem. No. I'm finding you these gems. I am handpicking these gems at schools all across the country. And you know what? And then not only am I vetting them, I'm going to mentor them. I'm going to train them. I'm going to prepare them. I'm going to guide them. And then I'm going to send them to you. Now what's your problem? And so I said, you're going to hire this woman from State University of New York in Oswego. What firm is giving her a shot? Nobody. Right? And I'm going to send her to you and just trust me, you're going to love her. You're going to want to hire her full time. And they're like, oh God, Seema. Okay, fine. Right. Then they call me up in the summer. Oh my God, Seema, she was amazing. I said, I told you. Right. And so that I would have never been able to get away with either if I were a for-profit business. But the fact is that I was able to do this and get away with it. I chuckle about it now. But think about what happened. I mean, again, these firms can't get enough. So I had to do a lot up front to educate these women, to teach these women about what we do and who we are and why this industry cares now and why you got to come work in this industry because we need you. It's a great career. Here are all the cool things you can do. And by the way, and this is what I said to them too, I said, and we will never let you feel left alone. That I knew was hugely important. right? Because a lot of us do feel alone. A lot of us going through our careers in our, my age group and above, we were kind of alone. And if it didn't work out, I mean, clearly in this industry or any industry, right? You get bumped around, you hit in the head, knocked around, punched in the gut. It happens. It's a hard industry. It's not easy. And I tell these young women, it's not easy, but it's super fulfilling and exciting and rewarding in all the good ways. You got to stick with it though. But then how do you stick with it? Well, you know how the guys stick with it? They have other guys. Hey man, you got hit, you got knocked in the head. So what? Let's go for a beer. You're going to be fine. Go back the next day. Woman, that happens to a woman. We look around, we're like, where are all the other women? Who am I going to have a beer with? And like, they look up, they don't see a lot of women. We look around, we don't see a lot of women. And at that point, you get kicked enough. You're like, well, shoot, man, this is no fun. This is no good. I'm going to go home. I'll go figure something else out. Right. So that's what we are trying to solve for also. So we have said to these women, we will never let you feel left alone. And we're going to build this community with you, for you, around you, so that you won't feel that way. And that is what has happened. So there's some of the confidence building I knew we had to do. I actually was shocked and surprised. Sometimes I'd look at resumes. I'd say, my God, man, you're a rock star. You're way ahead I was. But they come in with no confidence. It was unbelievable to me. So there were a lot of things I knew we had to do in order to get them there. So anyway, I can help you, Paolo, with reaching out to Latina, Latinx, but you tell me what we can do.
Thank you, Seema. It's so powerful. We do have one more question, I think, before we're going to be wrapping up. Charlotte.
Sorry, thank you. So I was just curious, like, I personally am a super competitive person. And so when I'm in these like very male dominated settings in this vast variety of finance clubs that are at Yale, and I'm like one of, the few women, I'm like, let's go. I kind of get riled up by that, but I know that that's like not the case for most people. And so I guess like, how would you suggest for me, someone who doesn't necessarily have a ton of finance experience behind me, I can still support my peers and being inspired to come to these types of clubs and trying out finance things? And then also in conjunction with that, even in like such a progressive space that is Yale, I still a lot of times will hear guys be like, oh, she's for sure going to get into this club because she'll be the diversity like let in, or she'll be like the girl that they let in because she's the girl. So I guess on top of that, like, how do you respond to those kind of accusations, I guess?
Yeah, well, so you're still at Yale College. And what year are you?
Yeah, I'm a sophomore, actually. I just submitted my GWI application.
All right. Excellent. I love that. Well, we have Maddie on the phone too, I think is also applying. Excellent. Well, Lori Sparling's on the line. She and I played softball together. I mean, look, being an athlete, growing up playing sports, it's just, you learn a lot of confidence. So, thankfully, and my parents instilled all that in me. And so I similar to you, I mean, I had that sense of confidence and you get knocked down, you get back up, kind of attitude and view on life and all that. And just the work ethic and the discipline, all that stuff is hugely valuable in life, right? Let alone in whatever career you decide to pursue. But I think, I've always looked at it as, because I've been the only woman in the room so many times. And there were times when I would walk in the room and they didn't think I was the chief investment officer. They thought some guy was the chief investment officer. Right. And, and I would, but I'd be sitting at the table clearly. Right. But they just make certain assumptions. And at that point I could laugh because I was far along enough in my career and I didn't need to worry about it. I just could chuckle and say, actually, no, I think you want to be talking to me because I'm the one who's ultimately going to decide whether or not we invest money with you. And so they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, So I've always, though, kind of looked at it as you just need to just chuckle because you know why you're there. And they will eventually know why you're there because once you start speaking up and once you start, adding to the conversation, they're going to know pretty quickly why you're there and that you deserve to be there as much as anybody. Right. Or more than some folks at that table. So I would just, stay true to yourself. This is another thing that I often say to a lot of young women who are interested in this business. And and in this career is that you can still be very successful and all that great stuff, but you can still be who you are and stay true to your values in our business. And I don't think a lot of women actually believe that. And so there was some of that I wanted, and I was like, look, I'm one of those examples. And yes, I've had a lot of twists and turns and banged my head against a wall sometimes and fell down and had to get myself up, but we all do. But I love what I do, and you got to stick with it. If you love what you do, you got to stick with it. And there will be people that you will find that will help you in those times when you need that friend to help you get back up. And so I just let that roll off your back or whatever, your shoulder, and just keep focusing on what you love and what you want to do. And I've always believed this, and I've always done this in my career, in my life, is you follow your heart, you follow your gut. And if you do that and stay true to who you are, I think you'll be super successful in whatever you choose to do, but especially in this business, because look, we're going to change this over time, and we are, right? There's much more diversity at the table than there was 7 years ago. I can tell you that firsthand in our business, because Girls Invest, and I see them, and I actually, some of my Girls Invest scholars, going back to what you're saying, Jeffrey, they're clients of mine now. They're already clients at Morgan Stanley, which is just so cool, right? So you can do this. You absolutely know it. They will figure it out very quickly. And if they don't, you know what? They're probably not going to have that seat at the table much longer. So that's my view on that.
Well,
That's
thank you.
Great advice. Thank you so much.
Of course.
And thank you so much for the great questions. And looks like we're about to run out of time. So thank you so much, Seema, for spending this valuable time with us tonight, and just for being an inspiration to all of us. I think we did have an announcement from Steve. Steve, are you there?
I am here. Thanks very much. And Seema, thanks so much for doing this. I only have one concern, which is you seem a little low energy. But
yeah,
you'll get
well,
over it, I'm sure. No, it was wonderful. So it was a great event. What I wanted to remind all of you is what was mentioned earlier. Cross Campus is a wonderful, caring community of Yaleys with 24,000 people on it. And every semester at the beginning, we pair 1,000 Yale students with 1,000 Yale alums. And that's not an embellishment. We actually do that every semester. So I encourage you, it's not too late. Go to Cross Campus. You'll click on mentorship there. If you haven't already done this, register to be a mentor if you're an alum, or a mentee if you're a student. What do you have to lose? So thank you very much for that, Yvette.
Sure.
that's excellent. Thanks so much, Steve. Thanks, Yvette.
Oh,
Thanks,
absolutely.
everyone.
I did want to give one last announcement for next week, just for anyone who's interested. Our show will be on Wednesday night, and it will be on overcoming professional adversity and exclusion. And it's actually a conversation with a wellness advocate and yogi, Reggie Hubbard, who is class of 97. And if you know anyone who might be interested in these weekly shows, or you have any ideas about other speakers, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear it. All right, well, that's a wrap. Thank you again, Seema, and thanks so much to everyone for coming. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Bye-bye.
night.